And if you have seen around campus, there's a couple of people wearing bright yellow shirts or blue shirts. And Meet Jesus Week is organised by the club UQ Evangelical Students. And it's just a Christian group on campus, and Meet Jesus Week has been a week or so where the club has had a whole stall set up just outside Merlot, near the Great Court Wall, and we're just taking the opportunity to talk to students on campus about the certain hope that Christians have for eternity, and that we can find meaning and true joy in this life. And we find that when we meet Jesus. So I encourage you to make the most of this week. Christians are out in the open and they're encouraging questions. They're bright yellow shirts, so use the opportunity well. I believe the truth really stands up to questioning. So if you have questions about Christianity, and if Christianity is claiming to be the truth, it should be able to stand up to questioning. So trust God to show you the truth of who He really is through asking lots and lots of questions. And events like this can also help us events like this can help to show who God is and help us to understand more about Him through reading the Bible. Also, Jesus matters a lot to people wearing yellow or the blue shirts, so come and ask us about it, and it's probably worth something. For me personally, meeting Jesus has given me so much meaning. Without having a creator who knows me intimately and knows me personally, knows who I am better than I know myself, there's no meaning for my life. My life is hopeless and really has no purpose. But realizing that Jesus is exactly who He said He is, and that He cares so deeply about me, has given me true meaning, hope, and a solid foundation to base my faith on. So I want you to meet Jesus for yourself as well, because He can also show you true meaning and purpose, and the purpose for which you're here. And I'm sure that He can and He will do the same for you as He did for me. Now, we have a couple of response cards which you should have gotten on your handout coming through. So on here you can, on the QR code on the front you can fill out your details over here, and that's a great way to get connected or to ask any questions, find out more about Jesus, or look into later discussion. And then there's also a QR code for Q&A, but I'll get into that a little bit later. I'll get into it now. So if you have any questions during the talk, or about anything that's been said, or about Christianity in general, you can scan the QR code at the top and send them through, and then I'll get them on my phone, and then we'll be able to ask Dan those questions after the talk. So Dan will be coming up shortly and speaking on how Jesus is gentle with the hurting. But before we hear him speak, I just want you to consider, what would you expect from someone with real power? Would you expect distance, or control, or even indifference? Together, we'll be looking into a moment from the Gospel of Mark that shows us something entirely different. Jesus stops for the overlooked, and He listens to the desperate, and He responds with unexpected gentleness. And it's a story where strength and kindness meet, and it just might change how you see God. So before we get started, let's just meet Dan. Would you come up to the stage, Dan?
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. So who are you and what do you do?
Cool. So my name's Dan. I was a student here at UQ a little while back. I did economics and business, but I got involved in the student club and it changed my life. Just taking more seriously what it means to actually know Jesus and wanting other people to meet Him as well. So now I work for this club, also a university chaplain, and so I spend my days talking to people about Jesus, like this.
Yeah, you sort of answered this a little bit, but how did you meet Jesus?
Yeah, so I grew up in a Christian family, so I always went to church, but I think it was really coming to university and thinking about it deeply for myself. So one of the things we want to do in this club is help people think about their faith in Jesus, or if they don't have faith in Jesus, what faith in Jesus would look like, at the same level as you're thinking about your studies. So I just looked into it deeply and realised actually this stacks up, and it changes everything if it's true.
Yeah, speaking of changes everything, what difference has Jesus made in your life, for you personally?
Yeah, well, I'm not working as an economist, which is what I studied. Not that I think everyone who knows Jesus has to leave their career, but I think it's the sort of thing where if this story is true, it does change everything. I was talking to one of the students this morning, and he's saying, we stake our whole life on this story, and I think that's right. That the claims of Jesus are claims about ultimate reality. Who made the world, what life's about, what is good, what is purposeful, what lasts, and what doesn't last. And so that should radically change everything, whatever our views about those ultimate realities are. So Jesus has just claimed my whole life because He's told me what's true and what's going to last for eternity and what's good and what's important.
That's great. So for anyone here who might have questions, what is your top tip for someone who's got questions about Jesus or is just checking Jesus out?
Yeah, we'll keep coming back to this as a recommendation, but I reckon if you've never done it as a thinking adult, you've got to read an account of Jesus' life for yourself. So read Mark's Gospel, we're going to listen to a bit today, we've got some John's Gospels up the back. And the best way to do that is, I think, read it with a Christian. Not so they can tell you what to believe, but so they can help you by answering your questions. And sometimes the Bible's a little bit hard to read, like any new genre or text you've never read before, so just have someone help you navigate it, but also to show you what it looks like for them as they believe it and live it out. That's my top tip.
Thanks, Dan. You can sit down if you like. We're just going to read the Bible quickly. So if you got one of these flyers, on the inside page just here, we have the passage that we're about to read. So I'll be reading from a part of the Bible called the Gospel of Mark. So Mark is a section of the Bible which tells an account of Jesus' life written from the perspective of a guy named Mark. And you can find the section in your handout, so just follow along as I read it. When Jesus had again crossed over by boat to the other side of the lake, a large crowd gathered around him while he was by the lake. Then one of the synagogue leaders, named Jairus, came, and when he saw Jesus, he fell at his feet. He pleaded earnestly with him, "My little daughter is dying. Please come and put your hands on her so that she will be healed and live." So Jesus went with him. A large crowd followed and pressed around him, and a woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years. She had suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors and had spent all she had. Yet, instead of getting better, she grew worse. When she heard about Jesus, she came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak because she thought, "If I just touch his clothes, I will be healed." Immediately her bleeding stopped, and she felt in her body that she was freed from her suffering. At once, Jesus realized that power had gone out from him. He turned around in the crowd and asked, "Who touched my clothes?" "You see the disciples crowding against you," his disciples answered, "and yet you can ask, 'Who touched me?'" But Jesus kept looking around to see who had done it. Then the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell at his feet, and trembling with fear, told him the whole truth. He said to her, "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering." While Jesus was still speaking, some people came from the house of Jairus, the synagogue leader. "Your daughter is dead," they said. "Why bother the teacher anymore?" Overhearing what they said, Jesus told him, "Don't be afraid, just believe." He did not let anyone follow him except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. When they came to the home of the synagogue leader, Jesus saw a commotion with people crying and wailing loudly. He went in and said to them, "Why all this commotion and wailing? The child is not dead, but asleep." But they laughed at him. After he put them all out, he took the child's father and mother, and the disciples who were with him, and went in where the child was. He took her by the hand and said to her, "Talitha cum," which means, "Little girl, I say to you, get up." Immediately the girl stood up and began to walk around. She was 12 years old. At this, they were completely astonished. He gave strict orders not to let anyone know about this and told them to give her something to eat. Thanks, Dan.
Excellent. Thanks for reading that, Arsha, and thanks for coming along. Incredibly powerful scenes, and if you were at the Mark drama where we acted out the whole of Mark's Gospel on Monday and Tuesday night, I think Tiana and Ben, who acted these two characters, captured the raw emotion and the pain of them really well. But I wonder if you've ever found yourself in a moment where everything just feels out of control, where life is a mess, where things feel hopeless and maybe just dark. Maybe it's a family crisis, maybe a health scare or some bad health that you're going through yourself. Maybe just the weight of life pressing down on you. Maybe you felt just incredibly alone, really forgotten. Now, I've been in those sort of places a few times myself, and if you've been there, then you'll know that when you're in that place, there are two things that you're really searching for, two things that we all long for when we're hurting. We really want someone who cares, someone who sees you, someone who listens and understands the pain or the fear that you're carrying. We want to be known and not just treated like a problem to be solved. But secondly, we want someone who can actually help. Someone with power, someone with the wisdom or the resources to actually make things better, someone who's able to fix it. We want someone who cares, someone who's got the power to do something about it. And ideally in the same person, but the hard truth is often the two don't go together. Now sometimes people do care, they care really well, but they just don't have the power to fix your situation. Right? You've got a friend who listens and cares for you really well, but they can't solve the problem. It's outside of their scope of control. Other times people have the power to help, but they just don't seem to care. It might be that you're trying to interact with the uni administration and they can solve your problem, but they're just not motivated to. You're just another number on the list. Or we look at the larger scale, immense suffering problems in the world, and there's people who could do something about it. There's governments with power, there's people with billions of dollars. We could solve the problems, but no one seems to care. It's not in their interests. And so nothing happens. Power and compassion, when they go together, is beautiful and amazing, but so often they don't. But what if there was someone who combined both? Someone who could powerfully help and genuinely cared. And here's why the question matters. Because whether we realise it or not, I think often we have these same expectations about God and these questions about, well, is God like this? If God is real and he really has not just a little bit of power, but all the power in the universe, what would it be like to approach him with my problems? Would he notice you? Would he care? Or would he keep himself distant? He's just too important. Maybe he'd even be disappointed in you. What would he demand from you before he acts for you? How would God respond to you in your need with all of his power? That might be something you wonder about, or it may be something you've already decided the answer about because, well, you've been through some hard things. And maybe you've prayed and nothing happened. Or in the times of suffering that you've gone through, it's left you feeling like God couldn't exist. Or if he does exist, he can't be powerful enough or care enough to do anything about it. Either way, maybe you're here with really big doubts about God, even critiques about him. Well, today I want to suggest that this story from Jesus' life might actually change the way you think about God. All week we've been trying to share Jesus with UQ, particularly through Mark's Gospel. We've been writing it out on those big boards, the grassy knoll. We've acted out the whole Gospel. And what we're trying to do is share Jesus because we think he gives an answer that we desperately need to hear. I've chosen this part of Mark's Gospel to listen to because I think it is thoroughly compelling. If you were there in Mike Drama, you saw it acted out, maybe it stood out to you as one of the scenes. We've got this pair of encounters with Jesus that just stand out to me because they're so raw in their emotion and because of the character of Jesus we see in them. We meet two people. We meet a father desperate for his daughter's life and a woman who is quietly carrying a hidden burden for 12 years. And they both come to Jesus in their desperation, needing someone who has the power to do something for them and the compassion that he would actually want to do it. And I think what they find is far more than they ever hoped. Jesus is the one with power, but also the one with gentle compassion, the one with authority, but the one with beautiful kindness. So let's explore the story together. What we're going to do is I'm just going to work through the story, talk through stage by stage and draw out the things we see about Jesus as he interacts with them. So let's start with the desperate father. Now we're jumping into the middle of Jesus' story, so a little bit of context to help it make sense. Jesus has been around on the scene in Israel for a while now, travelling town to town. And what's been really obvious about him, what people have noticed, is his power, his authority. He teaches about God with an authority they've never heard before. He's even got power to heal the sick. He's got power to calm a storm. He shouts to the wind and the waves, stop, and they actually do. He's even claiming power to forgive sins. And so he's gathered this huge following. Wherever he goes, large crowds turn up. And that's where we're at here. He's just landed in town from the other side of the lake, and there's a large crowd around Jesus. But amongst all the people in the crowd, we zero in on one person. It's Jairus at the start. Jairus is a man who's used to having power himself, but now he finds himself completely powerless and desperate for help from Jesus. See who Jairus is. He's a leader of the synagogue, a leading figure in the Jewish community. He's respected with a position of power and no doubt privilege that goes with it. He's a man who can get attention. He can get things done. But none of that means anything for him in his current situation because his daughter is sick, very sick, on the verge of death sick. And now confronted by her possible death, none of that position or privilege can help, except that Jesus has just landed in town. And so this powerful but desperate father, well, look what he does. Look at verse 22. When he saw Jesus, he fell at his feet. He pleaded earnestly with him, "My little daughter is dying. Please come and put your hands on her so that she will be healed and live." See how desperate he is. He falls at Jesus' feet, begging him, pleading him. He's going to do anything to get Jesus' attention. Why? Because he loves his precious daughter. Hear the tender care that he's got for his daughter and what he said, "My little daughter, my little girl is dying." Now later on in the story, we're going to find out she's actually not that little. She's 12 years old, which back in their time, in their culture, she's just a year off the average marriage age for a girl. So it's kind of like uni student age now. A bit weird for us, but it was normal for them. She's not a little girl in any sense. She's almost ready to be married off and start a family of her own. Why does he call her my little daughter? Because she's his little girl in that she's precious to him. She's not a toddler, but she is so precious. She's his little girl, his loved little girl, and he is desperate that she won't die. Makes me think of the confronting photos we see coming out of Gaza and other places where there's wars and suffering. The most compelling photos, and the journalists know this, the most compelling photos are the photos of parents cradling their injured child from an airstrike, or holding their child who's starving and emaciated, and you can see it in their eyes, "Won't you do something for my child, my precious little girl?" That's where Jairus is. My little girl's dying. He's desperate and he's been able to get Jesus' attention, so he makes his request. He pleads it. "Just come and put your hands on her and she'll be healed." He knows Jesus' reputation. He believes in Jesus' power, that Jesus could somehow miraculously save her from death. So he makes his bold request, "Please come." And so if we're thinking about power and gentleness, we're seeing Jairus is confident in Jesus' power, and we see just a really, really short snippet of Jesus' compassion in that it just says, so Jesus went with him. So not expanded on, but he was at least willing to go in amongst this crowd of other concerns. So we're on the way to Jairus' house, but before he gets there, something unexpected happens. The journey's interrupted by a woman, someone who's been quietly suffering for 12 long years. A woman who's been living on the margins of society. She's hidden and she's hurting. Let's have a look at her situation. It seems she's had menstrual bleeding for 12 years, non-stop. Period pain that's not for a few days a month, but constant. Day after day, turns into week after week, turns into year after year. I've got to acknowledge, for the guys in the room, we don't get this. We don't understand what this is like. I'm going to get a glimpse through having a wife, but we still don't understand as guys. The women in the room, you'll get this woman suffering far more than we will. What would it be like? She's not just uncomfortable. This poor woman is in pain. She's exhausted. She's weak. She's worn down by her condition. And it's not just an occasional discomfort, but that ongoing, exhausting physical pain and weakness. Can you imagine how she must be feeling after 12 years? But even worse than the physical suffering, well, not even worse, but to add to that, is the fact that because of the religious laws and cultures of her time, she is an outcast. She is considered unclean religiously, so she can't take part in normal religious life for the Jewish people back then. She can't go to the temple and worship. She can't take part in the religious festivals, the great family get-togethers. She's not welcome there because she's unclean, and even physical contact with her. A hug would make someone else unclean as well, so she'd be avoided. No physical contact, no intimacy. Desperate, and no doubt, she's tried the doctors, every doctor around, but it just says none of it helped. And it's left her broke financially and broken, no doubt, emotionally. She has only got worse. Imagine the loneliness that kind of social isolation would bring. Imagine the discouragement and the incredible emotional turmoil she's in with the physical suffering too. But in the middle of all of that, she has one quiet but confident hope. Jesus has just landed in town. Now, unlike Jairus, she doesn't feel like she can just boldly come forward and ask for help. She's not privileged to be confident like that. No, she approaches secretly, timidly even, slipping through the crowd, afraid to be seen. She doesn't feel entitled to ask. Maybe she didn't even know if Jesus would be willing to help her. Probably few people would have. She might have doubted his compassion, but we notice she's got no doubts about his power. See what it says? She's thinking to herself, if I can just touch his clothes, I'll be healed. And so at the moment she touches him, well, she feels it. Somehow she feels that something has changed inside her and she is healed. The only problem is she's not the only one who noticed it. Jesus notices that she's healed too, and he stops and he looks around and he asks, who touched me? Can you imagine what's going on for this woman, the roller coaster of emotions that she's gone through? She starts out with this daring hope that maybe, just maybe, she could be healed. She touches Jesus and she must have been overwhelmed with this amazed joy that, oh my gosh, after 12 years, it's finally stopped. But then Jesus asked, who touched me? And that amazed joy must have turned to fear and trembling because she's been found out. And what is going to happen? Well, Jesus starts the investigation. He insists he was touched and he's felt the power go out from him. And his disciples go, it's just the crowd around you. But no, it wasn't just jostling from the crowd. Someone has touched him for healing. And so he looks, and the poor woman, she knows she can't hide anymore. She steps forward and she's terrified. And she tells Jesus everything, her story, her suffering, and her faith. And here's the beautiful part. Jesus is not angry or scolding. He wasn't looking to accuse her or punish her for stealing his power or something like that. I think we see the depth of Jesus' gentleness and compassion in the way that he treats her. It's sort of like if you saw someone run out of a building with a first aid kit under their arm, you don't think they're stealing it and there's something nefarious going on. You think there must be an emergency situation. Someone needs help. Should I go and help too? Should we call an ambulance? That's what's happened with Jesus. Jesus searching for is like that. This is an expression of his care and compassion. Someone needs care. Someone has obviously been hurting and reached out to him. And when he speaks to her, well, there's no doubt about his care for her. I find these some of the most astoundingly tender words in the whole of Mark's Gospel when Jesus speaks to this woman, this hidden and hurting woman who he's never met, this weak and terrified social outcast. How does Jesus treat her? What does he say? Look at verse 34. Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering. What an incredible word to choose to start it with, to call her daughter. It's a very familiar word, it's a family word, and it's so much more significant in the context because remember, we're on a mission to save Jairus' daughter. Jairus who turns up concerned for his little daughter, his little girl. He's so moved by tender compassion for his little girl. And Jesus uses the same word about this woman, this outcast, this weak, trembling woman he's never met. And I think what he's saying is he's concerned for her just as much as Jairus is for his daughter. His compassion wells up in his heart just as much as Jairus does for his little girl. And so Jesus wants to speak to her, to comfort her, to be kind to her. And he has a bit of a conversation with her. He points her to the true source of her healing. It wasn't a superstitious touch as if there's magic in Jesus' clothes. No, he says it's your faith has healed you, the fact that you trusted me. And he goes on, he assures her of her position, that you can go in peace. You're fully accepted, you're fully restored, you're even completely loved. Go in peace. She came believing that Jesus had power. And I think in this interaction she discovers that he also has the gentleness and compassion to use that power for her good. To not only heal her, but to comfort her, to assure her, to really restore her to dignity again. It's an incredibly beautiful interaction Jesus has with this woman. Well, her story has a beautiful ending, but we're quickly reminded that it was an interruption in our emergency mission. Remember, we're on an emergency mission, a life and death mission to save Jairus' daughter. And to Jairus, the woman must have seemed like a distraction. Like the ambulance is racing in a life and death mission with the sirens wailing, someone's dying, they've got to get there, but they see someone fall off their bike and break their arm, and so they stop the ambulance. And No, that's significant for the person who's broken their arm, but I'm sure Jairus is going, couldn't this wait? Couldn't you have this conversation later? My daughter's dying, we've got to get there. And it turns out this delay with the woman, it's been too costly. It's been costly. While Jesus is showing tender care to the woman, the news comes, it's too late, Jairus. Your daughter's died. Those awful words, your daughter is dead. Your little girl, Jairus, your little girl hasn't made it. It's too late. And there's no hope. Why would you bother the teacher any longer, they say? Surely Jesus can't do anything now she's dead. Maybe he could have done something when she was alive. But now hope's gone. And put yourself in Jairus' shoes. The poor guy, his world has just come crashing down around him. His little girl has died. Jesus knows where Jairus' mind will be going. You know, that dark place of grief and despair that he's about to enter. And so we see Jesus' compassion again in how he treats Jairus. Look at verse 36. Overhearing what they said, Jesus told him, don't be afraid, just believe. I imagine he places his hand on Jairus' arm to encourage him. It's not a rebuke. He's strengthening him with encouragement. Jesus knows that he's got the power to raise the girl, and he's gentle and compassionate enough with Jairus that he wants to reassure him and strengthen him. Jairus, you can still trust me. Just hold on. Don't be afraid. It's not all lost. There is hope in me, even beyond death. Don't be afraid. Keep trusting. Well, they get to the house and it all does seem too late. Everyone is distraught in tears. They've got no hope. She's dead. And when Jesus offers them hope, saying, it's okay, she's asleep, she'll wake up, well, they just scoff at him because they know the dead don't come back to life. And so just an aside, sometimes when we read these stories in the Bible, people will say, oh, but they believed anything back then, they were superstitious and they believed in all sorts of myths. I think that's just a little bit of chronological snobbery and arrogance. These people knew what death was like. They lived with death in their houses more than we do. They saw it happen. They're not gullible or simple. They're not expecting miracles. They know death is final. They've no doubt seen it many times before. They know that there's no hope for this girl after death. They're not expecting Jesus can do anything. But we're about to see the extent of Jesus' power, even over death, and it's new when we're reading Mark's Gospel. This hasn't happened before. He goes into the girl, and he takes her hand, and he says simply, and I think the words are recorded in Aramaic because there's an eyewitness there who said it. He said, Talitha kum, which in Aramaic, which is translated from Aramaic, little girl, I say to you, get up. And so powerful is Jesus that simply at his word, no magic actions or anything, no potions, just at his word, life enters her body again. And she gets up, alive, immediately. And you can imagine the joy and astonishment in the room. Jairus has his little girl back. What incredible relief. So we see Jesus' power on full display, but it's not just a raw show of strength, it's a tender, compassionate show of his power. See, every action is filled with gentleness, isn't it? He takes her by the hand, he speaks gently, he restores her life, and then he gets practical. She's going to need a meal. She's been through a hell of a day, right? No one's had a day like this before. It's what I find so gripping about these stories, that Jesus is immensely powerful. He can heal the unhealable, he can raise the dead, but he does it with such gentle tenderness. This sort of power will be terrifying. In fact, could be terrifying. In the previous two stories, that was the result of Jesus' miracles, is people were terrified of him. They went, this is not ordinary power, this is scary. In the last area, he's crossed the lake because they drove him out. They said, we don't want you here anymore, because they were scared of his power. And this sort of power would be terrifying, except that in Jesus it's married with a compassion and a tender gentleness like a father has for his little girl. Jesus shows it to the marginalised and suffering woman. He shows it to the desperate and the terrified father. And he shows it to the little girl whose life has been cut tragically short. So this is what Jesus is like, that he's powerful enough to calm storms, powerful enough to heal sickness, even to raise the dead, yet gentle enough to stop for the hurting and to speak tenderly to the afraid, to say things like, daughter, and go in peace, and don't be afraid, and little girl, get up. If this is what Jesus is like, then this is showing us something important about God himself and what God is like. Because Jesus isn't just a teacher about God or a miracle worker. He's actually God in the flesh. Which means when we see Jesus' character and what Jesus is like, we're actually seeing what God is like. So come back and remember the question from the start. If you approached God in your perhaps weakness or perhaps hurting, what would he be like? Would he care? Would he listen? Or would he be distant and too important or make demands of you before he acted for you? And maybe your own experience of pain and unanswered prayers has left you feeling like God doesn't exist, or he either can't help or doesn't want to. But I think these two encounters with Jesus show us what Jesus is really like, and therefore what God is really like. That God's heart towards the hurting is the heart of Jesus in this story, that he's not too busy for the desperate. He's not too important for the overlooked. He stops, and he listens, and he comforts, and he restores. And maybe that's just what you need to hear. Maybe you can relate to someone in the story. Maybe you can relate to the woman feeling alone and rejected, suffering silently, and no one seems to notice or care, and you wonder, does God? Or maybe like her search for help in doctor after doctor, treatment after treatment, trying all sorts of things, and none of them fix what's wrong inside. They just leave her worse off. Maybe you know what that's like, chasing achievement or acceptance or experiences, possessions, relationships, but each time you've come back empty. They've cost you, and they've left you no better off, maybe even worse off. Or maybe like Jairus, you're staring at a hopeless situation, something you can't fix, something beyond your control, something that leaves you afraid, or you've been devastated by the tragedy of sickness or death in your family. Could God be powerful enough to help? Would he care? If any of those are you, then these encounters with Jesus show you what God is like. He is powerful. At just his word, he can raise the dead, and he's tenderly and gently compassionate. And that might fundamentally change the way you think about God and what it would mean for you to know him through Jesus. If God is powerful and gentle like this, surely you want to know him. If he's really like that, surely you could trust him like he's calling Jairus and the woman to. But you might ask, and it's a good question, well, how do we make sense of suffering now then? And is this a guarantee that if I trust in Jesus, then everything will be better and there won't be physical suffering or death? And there's a long answer, but the short version is this. To get the answer, we need to understand what these healings in Jesus' day are about and what Jesus actually came to save us from. So these healings and all of the miracles in Mark's Gospel, they're more than just random acts of kindness from a powerful healer. They're all signs. And they're like a big billboard pointing to the world that Jesus has come to bring us to. They point beyond themselves to a world where sickness and pain and death have no place. The world that Jesus is making new for us. And so they're kind of like a movie trailer. They're brief and powerful glimpses of the full story that's yet to come. And that full story is about more than just fixing our bodies. And God's kindness is about fixing everything that's wrong in the world. The whole network of broken relationships and injustice and pain and decay that we live in every day. And the root of our problem is bigger than just sickness. And the root of the problem is not just out there, it actually turns out it's in here, in each of us. The Bible calls it sin, not just the bad things we do, but it's our human tendency to push God aside and try to run life on our own terms. And when we unplug ourselves from God, who's the source of life, well, the whole system just falls apart. It starts to break from the inside out. And so that's where sickness and death come from in the first place. That's why even the things that are supposed to be good in life, the best things in life that we chase, they ultimately don't satisfy us. It's because we've unplugged and cut ourselves off from the one we're made for, the one who gives life and everything. And Jesus came to deal with that problem. And the incredible thing is that this man who has all the power shows that his tender compassion and his gentleness by dealing with the problem in a way we never expect. He enters our broken world and he experiences our suffering. And then he goes to the cross to die on it and to carry the weight of our sin and its consequences and to save us from all of that. And he rises from the dead again, breaking the power of death, not just for himself, but for anyone who will trust in him. anyone who will trust him that he is powerful to save and compassionate enough to want to. So trusting in Jesus doesn't mean you'll never get sick. It doesn't mean that every hardship will vanish. But it does mean that that deepest need of yours is met. That your relationship with God can be restored. And that you have the certain hope that one day Jesus will make everything new, including you. The raising of Jairus' daughter is like a sneak preview of what he'll do one day for those who trust him. Because Jesus rose from the dead, he can and will raise his people to eternal life, to a world where there's no more mourning or pain or death. His power means he can do it. His compassion means he is so willing to. And that's why we want to invite you to keep exploring Jesus with us. To see that Jesus is someone you can trust, because he's immensely powerful and he's beautifully gentle and compassionate. Now, but I expect you've probably still got questions. This might be your first time hearing these things, and you might still be working out what you believe. And that's great. So we'd love to help you explore that, to read Mark's Gospel for yourself, perhaps with a friend, to ask you questions, to get to know the Jesus who is both powerful and gentle. We're going to have some time for Q&A in a minute. You can scan the QR code on the handout you got. If you can get a handout, just stick your hand up and Joel will get one for you. You can ask anything you'd like from the talk or any other things, but also you can talk to others too. And it's worth asking the questions because if this is true, then Jesus is the gentle saviour we all need, the one who's powerful over life and death, and incredibly gentle and compassionate towards the weakest, and maybe not at all the way that you thought God would be. So I'm going to hand back to Arsha and then come back up and take some questions after you've had some time to think about what you'd like to ask.
We might just